And I was told, don't dwell on FT8. Don't dwell on FT8. Don't dwell on FT8. You know.
Our speaker tonight is Barry Feierman, K3EUI, who's been, I guess for Barry and I guess we've been a conversant, for the last couple of months. But I want to commend Barry for doing probably the best outreach of any one of our speakers in terms of reaching out to you, in terms of talking a little bit about what he wants to talk about tonight. I know what we've asked him to talk about, but obviously in terms of just sort of communicating what's going on and keeping in touch with us in terms of what we need to have done as part of this speaker series. Barry started his radio career as a 13-year-old. He was KN3EUI. Remember the N days for novice amateurs, and I certainly do. By using a Gonset 2 communicator on 2 meter AM with 10 watts and 2 crystals. He got his extra while he was a teenager, and he's been hooked on ham radio for life, as I think you'll find out. He has a background in astrophysics and a career as a physics and astronomy teacher, both in high school and at Westchester University and at Bryn Mawr College. He's now retired. I'm probably happier for that, with less time than ever before, right, Barry? With 2 grandchildren, he's active in Aries and Races in Chester County, Pennsylvania, and in other radio clubs. He's also one of 3 net control operators and net manager for the PA NBEMS PEMA net every Sunday night at 7:30 at 3583 kilohertz. Tune him in, and sign into the net. So his QTH is home to 12 antennas. Count them, 12, okay? And his primary interest is in digital mode. So without further ado, let me turn the program over to K3EUI, Barry Feierman, on Beyond FT8 tonight. Barry, thanks for joining.
Thank you. Good evening, all. Well, as I started to put this presentation together, I thought, oh, this might be interesting. Well, this is a good question. How does that work? So, in teacher mode, my slide collection went from 10 to 20 to 50, so based on kinds of questions that might pop up or what you might be interested in, and I was told, don't dwell on FT8, so I tried to put together a variety of slides to talk about digital modes in general, as if we're all real rookies, because in a way we are. I forgot to put this slide in. I would really say, if you want to look at some booklet and just read in general, Steve Ford's books from ARRL. The latest one is Get on the Air with HF Digital, and there was one around 2004, the HF Digital Handbook. I mean, there's so much you could read about the digital modes if you'd like to learn a little bit more about them. So normally, well, this is a large group. It's kind of fun. Normally, I would like to keep this as interactive as possible and take questions or comments or interruptions. We'll wait for the end. Between 7 and 7:40 or so now, I've been watching 20 meters live, and I'm just going to pick up my video here and move it over to a display, see if this comes through. Is that coming through? And it's, for me, it's inverted, but you see the letters and numbers?
Yes, can see it, yes.
All right, so let me turn on the sound. There's live 20 meters. Now the VFO is on 14074, so that's what you're hearing. But look at the lower part of the band, the CW part of the band. What do I see here? 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 contacts. There's a lot of wasted spectrum there, isn't there? That's what I wanted to just try here. Can I zoom in on that? Do you see that? Am I back live?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so there's a good reason why FT8 is dominating 20 meters right now, and we'll take a look at that a little later. So first, let me turn on share screen, and thank you for the invitation. So I taught high school for 40 years, and then at retirement taught a little bit in university life, very different. I worked at a Quaker co-ed boarding school, so we had 350 kids, teenagers, on campus all the time. So it was a very intense situation, just taking care of that many teenagers. I taught physics, astronomy, a little electronics, a variety of things, math. But ham radio has sort of been one of the constants in my life. As a kid, I was just curious how, radios work. Got my novice license and then kind of worked the world on 15 meters and 40 meters. And just, played my whole life with it. You see some of my shack in the background here. In fact, when my grandson, he's 12 now, he comes to visit, he says, "Grappy, clean it up, clean it up." It's just stuff everywhere because I've got a lot of projects at once. So let me turn on screen share and we'll get started. So hold your questions then till the end. All right, so far so good. Let me go to slideshow, make it big. And did that come up?
Yes,
We're
it
good.
did.
We're good. Okay, so I'm going to jump around a little bit because, see, it depends on your interest what I would like to say, but I'll just keep it global. Sound card digital modes. Okay, so we know what sound cards are. We kind of know what digital modes are. And the one question that I got asked right off the bat last talk was, why would you ever want to talk to someone with your keyboard? Why don't you just pick up a microphone? That's a fair question, isn't it? So when my son, he was 13 years old, and he loved to get on 20 meters. He had his general. He loved to get on 20 meters, then on a mode called Pactor 1. And on 20 meters, and he had one of these PK232s that you see here. He got a contact with a station in Argentina. He was very excited. Simple, small ICOM transmitter and a kind of a homemade vertical antenna in a tree. There's nothing very sophisticated about it, But Pactor 1, very efficient. So he got a contact with a station in Argentina on keyboard mode, Pactor 1. And after, interchanging, your name, your QTH, good signal, blah, blah, blah. This guy comes back and says, "I'm a lieutenant colonel in the Argentina Air Force, and I test fighter jets for a living. What kind of work do you do?" My son comes back, and the keyboard, he says, "I'm 13 years old. I'm in the 6th grade." I would love to see the expression of the guy's face when he realized he's talking to a little kid. So that's one of the advantages of the keyboard modes. You're not quite sure who you're talking to at the other end. So, sound card digital mode. So I want to play a game at first. See, here's my game. I'm going to play a tune. You guess the tune. All right, so here's what we're going to try. This is kind of leading by the chin, I know. Overall, I'd like to talk about the hardware, the modulation methods, the different modes, examine them. And if there's time, there may be some questions on the emergency modes, Winlink, FLDIGI, some other stuff, but I don't want to dwell on that. Certainly not going to dwell on FT8. So here's the first test. Can you identify a mode just if you hear it? So we're going to play a little Guess That Tune. Behind me, I have a live FLDIGI and computer and speaker. So we're just going to play it via the Zoom microphone. Hope this works. So this is a mode everyone's going to get, I'm sure. Guess the mode. I'm going to send CQ, CQ, K3EUI twice. Guess the mode. Well, that was pretty obvious, wasn't it? Do you like my fist? That was nice. That was my keyboard fist. So obviously, CW is a digital mode in the sense that, hey, the computer is generating the sound. But most of us don't need a computer to operate CW. That doesn't in any way take it out of the digital mode category, though. All right, so let's see if you could identify this mode. You might, depending on your background. I'm still setting CQ twice. All right. CQ, CQ, K3EUI. Now, what did you hear? You heard like dee 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 dee, kind of an annoying sound at a pitch at about 1500 hertz, which is also kind of annoying. So that was the standard sound of what we call radio teletype, RTTY. All right. That was pretty obvious. How about this one? This probably many of you will recognize. Oh, that was kind of interesting. It's kind of a warbling sound, not as musical, but if you could see my spectrum, that's only about 50 hertz wide. It's like, yikes, that's narrower than CW by a long shot, and a whole lot narrower than radio teletype. So that was PSK 31. That came out in the late 1990s. A fantastic mode. It's too bad that's kind of being overrun now. Here's one of my favorites. I hear it in the evenings on 80 meters quite a lot. Let's see if you can guess the mode. The end was the clue. I saw Ed was smiling. The end is the clue. Doody, doody. That's Olivia. Olivia. That's named after the author's granddaughter, I think. Olivia, doody, doody. Now, it wasn't that fast. I mean, it took a long time, didn't it, to send CQ, CQ, K3EUI. So that's not an ultra-fast mode. That was 8 different tones. Not that anyone's counting. Doody, 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 doody. 8 different tones and 500 hertz wide. So it's a little wider than typical CW. Very, very efficient, highly efficient, especially at night. I've worked 80 meters and 40 meters at night. I've worked stations on Olivia where I'm not even sure I'm hearing sounds in my headphone. My computer's printing all this stuff. Here's an unusual one. This is pretty. I'm a former bassoon player and saxophone player. And this is just a pretty sound. I'm still sending CQ. So these are all generated by a little laptop next to me and a sound card. In fact, a very inexpensive $5 sound card. That was the mode called Thor 22. Now, wouldn't you love a mode called Thor? Thor 22. The 22 refers to the baud rate, how fast it's switching. D-D-D-D-D-D. Thor is really quite musical. I mean, I love that sound. Thor. Here's one that's almost as musical. It's not Thor. That was pretty fast, wasn't it? It still sent CQ, CQK. That's MFSK mode. To the uninitiated, that sort of sounds a lot like Thor because it's just multiple tones at one time. It's a little more, how do I say it, staccato-like as a musician, dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee, rather than la-la-la-la. Here's a really unusual one. In fact, this kind of is annoying. I don't know what that sounds like on Zoom, but that's awful. That's MT63. Beautiful mode over repeater. It works unbelievably well. MT63, and it's 2K wide, but who cares if you're on an FM repeater? It's not quite as fast, but it's very robust. I only hear that now on 2 meters FM when we have repeaters that are working nets. Here's one that's very, very fast, but nobody likes to listen to it. Listen to how fast this sends CQ. Done. So that mode was called 8PSK 1000F. So I just wanted to start by saying, hey, look what I can do with a sound card. These are all different sounds, but they're all saying the same thing, CQ, CQ, K3EUI. So I hope that was an okay start to say, oh man, there's like all these different languages. There are. The other thing I wanted to show was you don't need fancy equipment to get into the digital mode. So this is my own little station here. It's, right now it's right behind me. But there's like a 15-year-old ICOM 706, a TNC, which is a used SCS backdoor TNC. You can pick them up used for about $500, $400. A little USB converter, so I have a COM port, a SignaLink, real simple sound card, about $100. Little MFJ tuner, This is part of the Go Kit for the Chester County Aries Races local group. And for a while I was the station manager, so I had to manage a couple of these Go Kits. So with this radio, I can get on any band, any mode, talk to someone's locally on a repeater, get on 20 meters, talk to literally with, and then an outside antenna, like 100 feet of wire. I could talk anywhere in the world, almost, with this little gadget. And it was all in a box, and I had a battery. So a typical all mode everything. Now they're newer radios, I would use today, but this is an amazing little portable station. It's still right behind me, and I've got the box that it all fits in. If I get deployed by the local Aries Races group, I can take this anywhere, set it up with a battery, and operate any frequency anywhere. So there's not a lot of investment here in money. So what kind of hardware do we need? Well, we need a radio. We need a sound card. Actually, some of the radios now have the sound card built in, so that really simplifies stuff. So, you can get on digital modes on HF single sideband. You can get on FM. We even have a group in Philadelphia that gets on with a little HT and the little audio cables from a speaker and a mic jack to a sound card. Doesn't take very sophisticated equipment, but you've got to figure out a way to get the audio in and out of the radio. The sound card, what's that? Well, like laptops these days have all this built in, and I'll show you some simple additional sound cards. The sound card input, well, you're getting what? Audio from the radio on receive, so headphone jack, speaker jack. Sound card output, well, that's your transmit audio. That's got to get somehow in the radio, but you could use simply a mic jack. Almost every radio has a microphone jack. You need a way to make the radio go from receive to send, so what's often called the PTT switching arrangement. A lot of manufacturers call it the Send, S-E-N-D, the Send line. You could use a COM port, you can use Vox, there's all kinds of things. And our cable usually has a ground to connect the ground in common between sound card and radio. So that's it, it's pretty simple. So what are we trying to do? We want to get the correct level of signals, not too much, not too little. Provide a way to send, the PTT, and traditionally avoid what's called RF feedback. That is the RF signal from your, cable, antenna, whatever, is getting back in the sound card, and that really messes things up. So avoid RF feedback. Well, that works on, voice modes as well. And, some people like to do rig control, cat control. That is, have your computer change the radio's frequency, filters, bandwidth. But that's optional. You don't have to do that. So in the old days, we started out with things like this. Remember, I'm just old enough to have, my first computer didn't have a sound card, and I had to plug in a sound board. These are pretty interesting things. It doesn't have to be very sophisticated for the purposes we are using. We're not playing symphonic music, right? So, plug-in sound cards, thing of the past. I have one of these. In fact, I have an even simpler one that doesn't have the volume controls. Little plug-in things that are, like $5 these days. And actually, for the ham radio needs, they work well. Once in a while, you get a bad one, but, you take your chance for $5. So what does it have? An in and an out. The microphone, and you see the symbols here, standard microphone, headphone. Usually the headphone is stereo. Usually the microphone's mono. That works. Little volume control. Investment of $10 maybe. This is the way most of us have a typical setup: a standalone computer or a laptop, a standalone sound card. That's an advantage in the sense that we won't inadvertently say, your computer says, "You've got mail," and that goes out over your radio. You don't want that to happen. So usually we have a SignaLink or some kind of a sound card that we dedicate for ham radio functions, not general computer audio. So what happens between the computer and the SignaLink? Well, there's one cable. We call it a USB cable. What does it do? Well, first it provides 5 volts to let the SignaLink work. And it also is, this is the digital audio side. So what goes over in this cable is all digital stuff. From the SignaLink to the radio, this is the radio cable. Now, they vary depending on where you're connecting this to. But this is the analog side, and the PTT side, transmit. And the audio is strictly dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee. This isn't a digital data connection here. It's audio. The other thing is, well, how do you get your transmitter to transmit when your software says transmit? So the simple way is to, if you have a COM port, set up your software so that if you send a positive voltage on either the RTS or the DTR COM port pin, that's pin 7 and 4. I don't remember why I memorized these things, but you played with them for so many years. So what does that do? So a positive voltage goes out over here to the base, and it simply makes this thing conduct. It's a switch. It's not an amplifier. It's a switch. So your PTT line, if you ground it, your radio transmits. So the PTT line gets grounded through this transistor switch. First, it works very fast. Second, maybe more importantly, it's quiet. It's not like a relay. Click, 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 click. So a simple way to get the computer to tell your radio, okay, dude, transmit. So I don't want to dwell on SignaLinks, but they're by far the most popular. There's a gazillion of them. I think I have 5 of them in the back of my shack right now. They're all over the place at Hamfest. It's sort of like the Chevy half-ton pickup truck. It can do a lot of things reasonably well for a reasonable price. But they have the USB connection and the radio connection. In the front, they have 3 knobs that make it very easy to play with. A transmit level, a receive level, and delay. This is interesting. This is like hang time. When you're finished sending, how much time do you want to wait before your receiver comes back to receive mode, or your transceiver? The hang time, delay. You can set it for very short for some of the Winlink modes, like 1/10 of a second, or set it a little longer for 1 or 2 or 3 seconds. Here's the back of it. It's still nice and clean, clear. You have a radio connection, a USB connection, MON. That means with headphones, you can monitor your transmit audio in another set of headphones or another speaker, if you care to listen to what you're sending. This is a transmit audio monitor. It's not monitoring the output of your radio. It's monitoring the output of the SignaLink. So really simple device. One of the problems is, they're made obviously for a price, and the original ones came out with transformers that are probably not as good as they could have been. But, there's thousands or tens of thousands of these SignaLinks around. They work fine on HF for most of the digital modes. They're limited to audio, let's say, under 3 kilohertz. Has a mechanical relay here rather than a transistor switch. I mean, why do that? That's kind of interesting. So when I transmit, I hear click, and I can hear it here with a SignaLink 3 feet away. Click, click. And it's got a couple of jumpers to allow you to modify it a little bit. But it's mono only. It's just left channel. The sound chip has stereo, but they don't connect anything to the right audio channel. Why not? Well, most of us aren't sending in stereo, right? And I don't have to listen to stereo, even though I've got 2 ears. So up at about 2018, this is what they look like. Then they came out with a modified one, and everyone said, oh, man, I want one of the new ones. Better transformers. Well, that means they can operate at a higher audio frequency for faster things. It's still mono, left channel, but they improved it quite a bit. A little cleaner voltage regulation, and then, I don't want to dwell on this, but it's a little better for the same price. And these are a little over $100 with the cables you need. So how do you set this up for your radio? Well, that's the challenge. So inside the SignaLink, you'll see a device like this called let me show it to you right here. JP1, the jumper block. So here's where folks get into trouble. So in the old days, we would wire from what we wanted to what pin on a microphone jack or a data jack. So usually power isn't necessary because it's getting power through the USB, but we need a speaker, a mic, and a PTT and a ground. That's all we need. But all these cables like this, these 8-pin cables, well, if you look at Kenwood, Yaesu, Elecraft, ICOM, they all use different pin configurations. I mean, come on. Couldn't you agree on one? Well, I guess the answer is no. Tigertronics had so many complaints and so many of these sent back, and usually it was the wiring was wrong, that they finally decided, oh, okay, let's do this. So they manufactured these things, which are just jumper blocks. So you write to SignaLink, or you get it when you buy it. I want the jumper box for an ICOM 22, So they sell you this little jumper block, and you have to insert it into here or into here. Now, you got another problem. I faced this with some of my friends. If you need bifocals or your eyes aren't, it's easy to get this in the wrong pins. I mean, come on now, be careful. And I had one friend, unnamed, couldn't get it to work, sent it back to Tigertronics, and Tigertronics said, there's nothing wrong with it. You just put the block in the wrong pin. That's kind of embarrassing. So each of the manufacturers has different, connector pins. 8-pin, so you have to get this to go with that, to the ICOM radio, or to the Kenwood radio, or to the, whatever. Kenwood also uses this, 13 or 15-pin connector. So that's a different set of wiring. So you just have to be sure to get the adapter and the radio to talk to each other with the right pins. That's enough of that, but that's where most of us make the mistakes. Rigblasters, these are also popular. This is like the Nissan pickup truck. Man, these things are well made. I used to know the guy who designed this and built it when they were up in Connecticut, then they moved out west. This thing is not a sound card. You think, well, why do I need this? This is a interface, a conditioner, a gearbox. Anyway, it takes the sound from some sound card and it conditions it. What does that mean? Well, it gets it to the right level. You go through a transformer, a couple other little parts. You can set it up for a left channel or right channel or both audios. Well, wait a minute, I'm not transmitting stereo, but this actual switch, this is from about 10, 15 years ago. You could transmit with audio from the right channel or the left channel or both. It just adds them up like mono. PTT with Vox or internal. It had a COM port in the back. Very nice. I've got like 4 of those behind me. This is a little bit more sophisticated. This is a true sound card from West Mountain Radio. So they call it the Rigblaster Advantage. Advantage sounds good, right? So this is, and it's a very good low noise sound card. But look in the front, it kind of looks the same. Transmit level, receive level, Vox delay. That's the hang time. A little switch here. Do you want to transmit with a COM port or with Vox, or just turn it off and do it manually? A little bit more expensive than the SignaLink. When I open these and look at them, they're really well built. So these are about $200. You get a lot more than just the SignaLink. The SignaLink has no COM port. This has a COM port. Why do I need a COM port? Well, I can use the COM port for the PTT signal. That's obvious. I could also use it as a CW keying cable. Whoa, why would I want to do that? Oh, because now I'm sitting at my keyboard typing, and what's going out of my radio on upper sideband is CW. How am I doing that? Different talk. But with a COM port, I can hook it up for CW keying, RIDI keying, rig control, cat control. So this is a lot more hardware here for about $200. You don't need it, but I have a couple of these as well. This is what the back looks like, and you can tell it's capable of doing a lot more stuff. The USB cable, obviously, a serial 232 for rig control, ins and outs for CW keying, FS keying, control meaning rig control. ICOM uses just the single wire here. Speaker and line audio, a separate PTT, like maybe I have a foot switch I used to use. The microphone, this is the data cable going to the radio. So you get a lot more for this, another hardware option. Just the same as the SignaLink, you have to hook it up for individual radios. So this one's hooked up a little differently. Their jumper block here has the same kind of push-in pins. So this one says Kenwood RJ45 modular. So you have to get the block that plugs into these that fit your particular radio. Or if your eyes are okay, you don't need the block. You can just wire it up with number 22 wires. That's how I usually do it. So it says an in and an out. And, again, receive audio, transmit audio, ground, PTT. It's really pretty simple. Once you get it hooked up and it working, you just close it. You don't mess with it. A real simple ICOM cat control. It's one audio cable. So that goes in the back of my Rigblaster, and it goes to one of my ICOM radios. A couple of my friends have this. It's just called a Rigblaster no mic. No mic. Well, that tells you there's no microphone connection. So if I unplug my microphone, put it in a drawer, and put it behind me, I can plug this into the mic jack, and it has transmit audio and a PTT with a COM port. And these are often, at Hamfest, like $20 used. You can see by size of the quarter, it's a real small gadget. Does have an isolation transformer. So a real simple way, if you have a sound card, and I'm sure we all have sound cards in computers, you can hook your sound card through this into the radio. I was curious whether I could operate either fainter signals or, a little more with a better sound card. Do I need a good sound card? So I bought a Sound Blaster, $100. This is really nice. You can spend more and more money for sound cards, but notice the output is just these, typical phono plugs. So I've got to figure out a way to get the audio in and out from these plugs into my radio. So then you're messing with, some homemade audio cable. This is a good 10, 15 dB quieter than my old SignaLinks behind me. But, if I'm operating on 80 or 40 meters, the SignaLinks are fine. If I was operating moon bounce or something where I really wanted, this is probably a far better sound card. I'd be curious if any moon bounce operators are using SignaLinks. A new modem came out. I know the owner and the author of this pretty well now because we've been in dialogue. The DRA, digital radio adapters, they're sound cards. These are really high class, well designed. First, they're stereo, left and right. Next, there's no transformers. So it can go up well beyond 10 kilohertz. Now, I'm not going to do that on the HF bands, but for some modes like FM, you can operate with higher and higher audio and get faster and faster throughput. Not on a repeater, of course. This is I've got one of these. It's the talk of the town. I mean, my town's Philadelphia. A lot of the guys have bought these. Separate transformer, separate pots for adjusting the audio level left and right, and a receive. And these things are really cool. It's a LM386 amplifier. So these could drive a Mack truck. I mean, there's enough audio here to easily drive UHF radios at 9,600 baud. Just everything about it is classy. The only thing is it doesn't come in a nice box with the knobs. And I've been talking to the owner of the company about this. I said, I want to design this with some toggle switches and knobs. And I think it'll really look way cool. I know you're going to have to charge about, $50 more for it. And he said, yeah, I've already looked into that. People want to buy them cheap, not like another $50. So this is about the same price as a SignaLink, but far, far, far better. Yeah, enough about that one. Masters Communications. If you're curious, masterscommunications.com. The owner is Kevin, and he'll write to you back personally. He and I have exchanged tons of emails. Really well-made sound card, but maybe overkill if you want to just get into it from the first. And there are other sound cards, the MFJs, the Rig Experts, all of these are fine. I thought, what's the simplest thing I can do? I can go from a laptop to my radio, no interface, no nothing. But I realized I was getting RF feedback because of ground loops. So here's a little Radio Shack isolation transformer. Notice it's, the red and the white means there's stereo. So I use one, let's say the red for transmit audio, white for receive audio. Inside here, there are two real small transformers. It just isolates the ground and avoids all kinds of mess with hum. So this, well, there's no Radio Shack anymore, but I think when I bought this, it was like 10 or 15 bucks. I did try connecting directly the speaker and the microphone audio from my laptop right into the radio. It didn't work very well. I got lousy signals. Of course, if you buy modern rigs, they have the sound cards built in. But, these are the newest, the greatest, and they are cool. But then you avoid, any external sound card with audio cables. So you save some money, but of course, these are, $1,000 radios here. So that's my end of the hardware. You can get into it with a little $3 USB, sound card, and you can have fun. You can use your laptop audio direct. Try that. Just have to wait to connect the radio and the computer.